What is up, guys? Hey, welcome to our training on the 3 methods of endurance work that we're going to be doing over the course of these 100 days. Now, my goal with this is to give you guys a very surface level understanding of the how and the why behind this approach to training. I want to cover why it's important, how we're going to execute it on a very high level, and give you guys a clear picture of the path of how to do this with the highest level of efficiency possible. So, just to get started, when I think about endurance training, I always think about what the goal is, right? What the end result should be behind this. And I like the idea of trying to build a very robust cardiovascular engine. An engine that's going to allow you to do anything that life throws your way. Whether it's a buddy calling you and saying, hey, let's do a 14er, or it's your kid wanting to race you in a 100-yard dash. I want you to have the ability to do whatever demands come your way in life. So I love this picture of this engine because that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to build a very robust cardiovascular engine. Now, what we don't want when we're thinking about this, and when we think about robustness, I think about having all different capabilities. Now, you'll see here on the side, we've got the fast and furious, kind of gone in 60 seconds drag race car. We do not want that, right? I don't want to be able to go just short and fast. Then you'll see over here, we've got this old school Prius. I absolutely don't want you guys to turn into Priuses. I don't want you guys to be kind of slow, boring, like a marathon runner. We do not want that. Now, what do we want, right? I love this picture of the Intimidator, man, Dale Earnhardt. But what I want you guys to be is his car behind you, right? He can go 200 miles an hour in this car, and it can go all day long. And that's what I think is the most important thing when it comes to our endurance training. How can we go at a very, very high level for a very long time? How can we build that robust engine? And I think hitting it from the 3-pronged approach that we're going to cover over the course of these next few slides is the way that we can do it, right? We want to be able to go hard and fast, and we want to be able to sustain that for as long as you need to. Now, what's the ideal outcome here when we think about our endurance training, right? Number one, and really the crux of this whole thing, right, whether it's what we do in the weight room or what we're going to do with our conditioning, is we want to improve our cardiovascular health so we can live a long and healthy life, right? In addition to that, we want to increase our ability to recover within each training session. I know a lot of people, especially on the front end of this program, are going to feel like they don't have stamina to last the entire workout. Like we get towards the end and they're just drained, right? And the reason that happens is not because you don't have muscular endurance. It's because you do not have an aerobic system that's going to allow you to complete everything that you want. And then the last one is we want to build our capacity to handle a high workload with varied training intensities and anything that life throws your way. Like I said on the front end of this, I want you to have no limitations in your life. And if we really want that outcome, building a robust cardiovascular system is the best way to start that process. Now, there's a couple conditioning myths, right? The first one is that the harder you train, the better shape you'll be in. That is absolutely not the case, right? Pushing yourself to the max every single workout sometimes can be the worst possible thing that you can do when it comes to building your conditioning. Now, the second one is that HIIT training is the most effective method to burn body fat. This isn't 2005 anymore. The research is very, very clear that steady state cardio and what we call extensive intervals is in fact the most effective way to burn body fat outside of adding lean skeletal muscle. Now, number 3, that interval training is all you need. It absolutely is not. This ties into point number 2 here, that HIIT training is not ideal all the time. We have to have our what's considered zone 2 steady state cardio if we really want to build the best endurance that we possibly can. And number 4 is that cardio training is boring. I think one thing that you'll find as you get into this program, there are times where cardio can be boring, but it doesn't have to be. And we try and build a system that kind of keeps you on your toes, pushes you in different and unique ways, and will keep it interesting so that you're not just sitting there walking on a treadmill for 45 minutes. Now, one thing that we're going to cover here is the two energy systems. Now, I've got two in parentheses because really there's three, and we're going to show that in a slide coming up here. But the two that we are going to focus on are your aerobic and your anaerobic. And the way that we're going to think about it is aerobic is your ability to go for long periods of time, and anaerobic is your ability to go hard for a short period of time, right? So if we break it down, your aerobic is dependent on oxygen, and your aerobic system refuels your anaerobic energy production, which means that when we're thinking about anaerobic energy systems, it can only reach a certain point unless you have a strong aerobic system. The greater the base of our aerobic system, the greater potential that we've got within our anaerobic system. Now, I hope that makes sense to you guys. When we're looking down here at anaerobic, this is not dependent on oxygen. However, it's improved by boosting your aerobic, like I just said. And the anaerobic, as it compares to aerobic, simply just provides energy faster than aerobic, but it also fatigues quicker. Now, this is a very good way of looking at it. And I know I mentioned that there's three energy systems. We're covering two. The first one right here, this is your ATP-CP energy system. And this is your short burst stuff, right? Like, I like to look at this as a track meet, right? This is your 100-meter dash, right? Your 60-meter hurdles. This is your anaerobic system. This is your 200 to 400-meter dash, your short sprint stuff that's going to be kind of less than 60 seconds. And for our purposes, we'll push that time up just a little bit. And then you'll see down here in the green, this is your aerobic system, right? So this is your ability to go at a nice steady pace for a very long period of time. So as we get into it, the two energy systems that we're looking at are your anaerobic right here in this gold and your aerobic here in the green. Now, our approach, we use a three-pronged approach, right? And it's just three different methods to attack our conditioning. And within your program, you're going to be programmed 3 different training days each week when it comes to endurance work. And of that, we're going to hit one of these each day. So the first one is our Zone 2 steady state cardio. So if we look back at this previous slide, that's this work here in the green. This is absolutely the most important thing that we do. And I would make the argument that when we look at every single training day, whether it's your strength work, your mobility work, or your endurance training, that this Zone 2 steady state is the most important thing that we can do. This is the stuff that's going to build our heart health, that's going to allow us to recover faster. It's going to allow us to have a greater, what we call all-day energy, and it's extremely important. And this has been kind of bastardized in kind of fitness culture, but I tell you what, it is absolutely critical. And once that you commit to doing this and you do this for a couple weeks, the difference that you're going to see with your energy is going to be monumental, right? So Zone 2 steady state cardio, the primary method to build our aerobic base. This plays a major role in recovery, improving heart health, and building our ability to handle large workloads. And down here, you can kind of see the parameters that we're going to follow. The biggest one that I want to point out is this need for a conversational pace, right? This should not be extremely hard. This should be something that if you're riding the bike at the gym, you can have a conversation with the person next to you and not be out of breath while you're doing it. If you find that you are out of breath while you're doing it, one of two things is the case. Number one, you're either pushing too hard, or number two, you're incredibly out of shape and you need to do more of this. Now, the second one is our extensive intervals. And this is kind of a blend between your aerobic and your anaerobic system. If you remember that slide previously, it stated that the anaerobic system goes up to 60 seconds. For us, our extensive intervals are typically going to be between 60 and 180 seconds, so between 1 and 3 minutes. The extensive intervals, they're longer, more extensive bouts of effort that allow us to build our ability to sustain a moderately high volume and intensity. This should be something that isn't incredibly hard the majority of the time, right? You'll see down here, I said that RPE is a 6 to 7, but sometimes it can be an 8 plus. when we look at training readiness, so when we look at your ability to walk into the gym and complete any workout completely as prescribed, your readiness really plays a big role in that. Primarily, the readiness of your central nervous system. So let's say we've programmed your extensive intervals. You're going to do 10 sets of 60 on, 60 off. But the night before, your kid didn't sleep. You got in a fight with your wife. Your boss is riding on you, and stress is just mounting on your shoulders. You might come into this extensive intervals, and what last week felt like a 6, this week might feel like an 8, right? That's something that we want to take into account when we look at this and know that sometimes it's okay to back off a little bit. I don't want this extensive intervals to be something where you are collapsing on the ground afterwards, gasping for air. This should lean a little bit more towards your aerobic system than it does anaerobic. However, sometimes it will kind of cross over into that anaerobic type feel as you're actually implementing it. And then number 3 is our intensive intervals. This should be, for lack of a better term, fucking really hard, right? I think that there's value in doing really hard things. And the intensive intervals is an opportunity for you to do that. We typically are going to be between 10 and 30 seconds. Write that in pencil, not pen. Sometimes we will go over, sometimes we will go under, but typically 10 to 30 seconds. I don't want you to do this for more than 1 session per week, and that RPE should be between an 8 or a 9. And the reason why this is a 1 session per week, where the other 2 can be 1 to 2, is when we talk about that training readiness. Fatigue is a cumulative thing, and the intensive intervals are very, very fatiguing. This is the one where you walk out of the gym, you sit in your car, and you're like, my God, if I drive, I might get a DUI. Like I'm on another planet. And that's how it should feel. And we want to make sure that we are limiting that total workload while also taking into consideration that doing hard things is a very good thing for us, right? We should push ourselves. We should make ourselves uncomfortable. And these intensive intervals is exactly where we're going to do that. Now, let's dive in a little bit deeper into kind of the practical application of each of these 3 modalities. Okay. Now, the first one, our zone 2 steady state. As we've already covered, this is the most important thing that we're going to do. Now, for this example, this is what we're using in phase 2 of the 100-day intensive. This is the approach that we're going to hit. We're doing 4 minutes on, 1 minute off. Now, with all of our work that's interval based, the minutes that are off or the time that is off, I want you off, right? This isn't the turkey trot 5K. It is okay for us to stop moving while we're doing this, right? So we look at it, we're 4 minutes on, 1 minute off. This should keep our heart rate pretty steady, and we're going to progress our volume over time, meaning, right, we're doing 5-minute intervals essentially. We're going to start with a 25-minute bout, 30, 35, 40. And then again, over here in our notes, I want you to choose one piece of cardio equipment, preferably a bike or a rower or something that's not going to be super pounding on your joints. Now, if you are a runner and your hips and your knees and your ankles are great, then doing this outside is phenomenal, right? Get your vitamin D in, take care of your mental health, be outside, do what you like to do. But I would prefer this to be something that's a little bit more joint friendly. So you're going to choose one piece of cardio equipment. Again, RPE is going to be a 5 to a 6. And then here in yellow, this is aerobic base and it should not be hard, right? Again, conversational pace. If you are gasping for air and struggling to complete this, you're either going too hard or you're extremely out of shape and you need to back off a little bit so we actually get out of this what we want, right? Don't be a warrior when it comes to the zone 2 steady state cardio. Do that in your intensive intervals. All right, now the next one is your extensive intervals, right? Again, this is kind of that mesh point between aerobic and anaerobic. For this example, we're 90 seconds on, 60 seconds off. As you'll see here in the yellow, this should not be incredibly hard. Like I mentioned with the aerobic training, if on this you are dying and gasping for air, back off a little bit. Allow yourself to complete this I don't want your zone 2 cardio or your extensive intervals to be a murderous workout, right? They should be something that is restorative, that you walk out, you feel good. Maybe you've got like a little bit of a runner's high type feeling, but I do not want it to be like I am on the ground in a ball of sweat gasping for air. Okay. So you'll see kind of how we build our volume. And again, with this, your 90 seconds active is active. Your 60 seconds recovery is just recovery. If you're out and let's say you're on the bike and you're going 90 seconds at a push pace and 60 seconds at a recovery pace, well, then you're just doing a hard version of zone 2 cardio. That's all it is, right? Allow yourself to get some heart rate recovery because during this 90 seconds, you're going to see a spike in your heart rate. And I want this 60 seconds to allow it to come all the way back down. And if we were to track your heart rate, we should see this little bit of an up and down on a chart, right? Again, RPE is a 6 to 7, should not be incredibly hard. And what I like to do with this is I like to choose somewhere between 1 and 4 cardio pieces. Typically, I'll choose 2, and I'll go back and forth between them. Like I mentioned, we don't want this to be incredibly boring. Like I will do a rower and a bike, or I'll do a ski erg or a sled push with a bike, or I'll run and do a sled push. I'll go back and forth, so I've got a little bit of a different stimulus. So it kind of keeps me active and keeps me engaged with what I'm doing. Now, one thing I'll mention, and I should probably have a slide for this, but there is an app called Seconds. It's the icon is a red S, and that's the best one that I've found in terms of timing your intervals. Right? I don't want you sitting here watching your watch. Put your headphones in, open up that Seconds app, set it to your rounds timer or your hit timer, and that way it's just beeping in your ear, and you know when to stop and when to start. That way you're not having to constantly check your phone and make sure that you're following your intervals, right? Make it easy on yourself. Use that Seconds app. Now, your intensive intervals, as I've got highlighted here in yellow and as I've mentioned a few times, this should be hard, right? Your RPE is an 8 to a 9. Same setup where we're choosing between 1 and 4 cardio pieces. Know that your rest breaks are going to be a little bit shorter. So if your setup is something that you need to adjust a bike height, a bike seat height, or you've got to move to another area of the gym, take that into consideration when you're doing this. But you're 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. We're going to build your volume like this. So we're going essentially 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, trying to kind of stair step our intensity and our volume while we introduce this to you. But again, 20 seconds on, as hard as you possibly can, and 40 seconds off. And think about your goal should be like, how hard can you recover, right? How much can you slow your breath down and slow your heart rate down so that when we get to this 20 seconds, we can truly push ourselves as hard as we can. One thing that is true about both the extensive intervals and the intensive intervals is they kind of feel like credit card debt, right? You get a credit card, you're swiping that sucker, and you feel really, really okay with it, right? Like it's like, okay, this isn't too bad. But over time, it's like, holy fuck, I am buried. Like this is growing on me. I'm in over my head. And if you get to this intensive intervals and you get later in the rounds and you don't feel like you're buried in this workout, you need to increase your intensity. Likewise, if you get to rounds 1 and 2 and you already feel like you're buried, you need to back off a little bit. So take that into consideration. And remember, on this intensive intervals, this is your opportunity to push. Your extensive and your zone 2 is not your opportunity to push. Do it here on the intensive intervals, but really, really be smart with how you're allowing yourself to recover. Now, keys for success here. Success. Now, this is true for any type of endurance training that we're going to be doing. And I know a lot of them we've touched on before, but I want to make sure that we hammer in on these things, right? Your first one is during your rest breaks, like fucking rest, okay? Don't be that CrossFit guy who's doing burpees in between sets of power cleans, or that person who's running in place next to the bike. Like, don't do that. Allow yourself to work hard within the intervals, but then when it comes time to recover, fucking recover, right? Just chill out a little bit. Allow yourself to come all the way down with your heart rate and your respiration rate. And then when it comes time for your active period, allow yourself to push at the right volume when it comes time. Now, your second one is stick to your RPE. Now, RPE is completely subjective to yourself. right? RPE is how you feel. What is your rate of perceived exertion? So if you're doing your zone 2 cardio and you find that yourself is out of breath, right? Your RPE is above what it should be. If you're prescribed a 5 to a 6, but you feel like you're gasping for air, back off a little bit. It's okay to stick to a intensity level that is subjective to you and what you need. So stick to your RPE. Now, the third one, and I think I've hammered on this for our zone 2 and our extensive intervals, is understand that not everything needs to be hard. It is okay to go to the gym and not kill yourself. It is okay to go to the gym and just get the workout done at the assigned RPE. In fact, that is the smartest thing that we can do. When we're looking at training for longevity, these 100 days are going to be challenging. We have to have days that aren't incredibly hard. So understand that there's days where you can back off. Those are your days of your zone 2 cardio and some days when it comes to your extensive intervals. Now the last one, there's 5 of these. Number 4 is to choose joint-friendly movements. Like I mentioned before, running is great, but if running doesn't agree with your knees and your hips, or if you're feeling banged up from a previous lift that you did earlier in the week, then back off and ride the bike, or do a skier, or swim, or do something that is friendly to your joints. And then the last one is to complete a nervous system reset after high-intensity bouts. And we'll have another training on nervous system resets, but essentially think about lay down on your back, put your legs up the wall, close your eyes, and spend like 3 minutes taking nice deep breaths, right? In through the nose, out through the mouth, and try and allow yourself to go from that sympathetic kind of fight or flight nervous system and allow yourself to come down to a recovery or sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so let's talk about one final note when it comes to this stuff is the reason that we are doing endurance training, right, is not because it burns calories. It's not because it burns fat, right? The best way for us to do that is through strength training and proper nutrition. The reason that we're doing endurance training is this should be our goal, right? I want to be an old man who is in great shape and who has the ability to thrive for as long as I'm on this earth, right? This is my goal, right? And the endurance training builds our heart health, builds our aerobic fitness, and allows this to be a reality. If we skip over this, right, the chances of us not making it to this is going to be greatly increased. But if we really dive in on our endurance training, the chances of this being us goes through the roof, okay? So just remember that. We are doing this endurance training because it's the best thing that we can do for the inner workings of our body. And I'm a strong believer also that endurance training is one of the best things that you can do for your mental health as well. So dive into this. Follow a lot of the stuff that we talked about on here. Stick to your RPEs. Understand that not everything needs to be hard. And push yourself at a level that is subjective to what you need. Okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If there's any questions that came up, I am always available for you. So please feel free to reach out. And I will see you guys on the next one. Talk to you soon.